Well, you guys, today at the Boynton Studio, we have two very special guests. We have Ryan Cassidy and Johnny Ray Miller,
Woo!
and
Woo!
we are thrilled to have them.
Yeah.
So, Johnny was on the podcast once before, and we had a great time talking to him about his book, Where We're Singing. This time, he's here to talk about the book he co authored with Ryan Cassidy. James Cagney Was My Babysitter. Ryan Cassidy is the youngest son of Academy Award winner Shirley Jones and Tony Award winner Jack Cassidy. I have notes.
She has notes.
Growing up in Hollywood with famous parents, you are bound to be in the company of a movie star or two. Well, Ryan was no exception. One day he found himself enjoying an afternoon with the one and only James Cagney. It was that experience that inspired him to write James Cagney Was My Babysitter. So welcome to the podcast, Ryan and Johnny.
Hey, Ryan and Johnny, our two favorite guys.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, and Ryan, we just saw you recently. We were at the Shirley Jones Gala event.
I remember.
You remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Spent
And
years of time there.
That
It
was
was-
It was unbelievable.
What was your favorite part? If you don't mind, I would like to tell you my favorite part of the whole event.
I think I think sitting in the wings, or just standing on the wings of the stage and watching my two brothers get up there from that point of view, and just watching them perform, watching them tell stories, watching all those performers pay tribute to my mother through her songs. The whole event was just extraordinarily magical for me.
Yeah.
And very emotional in that it
Yeah.
brought back so many memories from my point of view as a child, whether it be with my mother on a set when she was working on a movie, or on the set of The Partridge Family. It was cathartic and it was just incredible. I don't know. There's a lot of emotions that it carried, but all positive.
I think we could feel that. We could feel that too when we were there.
I think just gratitude, just the notion that she's still with us, and that we can still share stories with her, and she can share stories with us. So that's really the emotions.
Yeah.
I really loved when the kids sang. That was my favorite.
She was
part.
adorable. That family, the Partridge Family. Yes. Loved it. Adam was great. He was funny. Yes. We loved his stories.
He's such a nice guy, such a talented guy.
Yeah.
Adam was great. They're all
all did great.
All of the entertainers, all of the performers were just phenomenal.
I enjoyed the videos.
We loved it.
All the stories too, because we thought about our stories too that connect us to your mom. And they were telling their stories, how they connected to her. And I thought that was special. You know, we all have our story. So it's nice to hear their stories.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, we hear things like she's America's mom, and there's a lot of truth to that. And I think everybody who grew up watching her primarily on the Partridge Family connected with her from their universe they were involved with, that they were growing up with. And maybe a very dear friend of mine who grew up in kind of a poor neighborhood and had some challenges with his family growing up, always looked forward to connecting and watching my mother on the Partridge Family, because it brought him into a world that he didn't have, that he felt safe with in some way. And those are the kinds of stories that really warm my heart that I hear, you know.
And that story is very similar to my story, because I grew up in the inner city of Chicago, and income, single mother. And that's how every Friday night, you know, I was the black sheep of the family, so to speak. And I was one of them. Me and Danny were buddies in my head. And
Well,
You are buddies.
my dear friend John Thomas and you have a lot in common, because he has almost the same story.
Yeah.
He's the fellow I was just telling you about that.
That's funny
He would
how
always
you,
and say, Ron, I felt so connected to your mother growing up, and to this day we're dear friends. And I don't know, I just, you know, people ask me, what was she like, you know, as a real mother? And there's a lot of parallels that I always tell people, in that, you know, I felt that, you know, she didn't have, it wasn't a real stretch playing Mrs. Partridge on that show. She really is a lot of that character in real life. And she would always be fair about everything. And she would always hear both sides of whatever the story was. If there was a conflict between my brothers, my two brothers, or all of us, she would always listen to both sides of it and kind of make you would never feel like she just left you out. She was just...
She brought peace.
She was, yeah. And she always, even if she punished us for something, like whatever it may be, she'd always come around and say, I love you, but this is for this is for your benefit. And you may not know how, but you will.
But she balanced it out for you. She knew that there had to be some discipline, but she did it, I guess, in a nice way.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Where you kind of understood it. She kind of made you understand at your level. Yes.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So before we get going on the book, I want to find out how it all started. Like, how did you and Johnny collaborate on this book? What was the beginning of this whole thing?
Johnny,
you want to start out, Johnny?
Yeah, sure. So my Partridge Family book, When We're Singing, had just come out, and I was at the Hollywood show, nervous, innocent, scared out of my mind. What are people going to think of this book? And they sit me right next to Shirley Jones, who I had interviewed, but had not yet known what she thought of the book. And yeah, and so it went so well. I mean, I'm being a little dramatic here. And then, I don't know, halfway through the show, this fellow comes up to my table, and it's Ryan Cassidy, and I'm tongue-tied and speechless and, proud and embarrassed, all these things all put together. And we just start chatting. And I think he would tell you that we definitely are personalities of a similar nature. And all of a sudden he says to me, I have had this idea for a book for a really long time. For now, I'm just kind of calling it James Cagney Was My Babysitter. And he kind of laughed at himself. And I immediately was like, I could see it. Like, right away, I could see it. It said everything to me. I knew what it was going to be about. I mean, the in a big picture. And then we just started talking, and that's kind of how it got rolling. And it's just all along, I just felt very connected to his story, especially with that book. It's really got so much innocence of heart in it. And that's something that I like, that I can connect to. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Just a childhood story that everybody could feel warm about.
Anybody could read it. It could be a 3-year-old, you're reading it to them, or it could be in preschool or kindergarten, they're reading themselves, or us. We love the book.
Well, I had fun reading it last night to Cindy. It was like and then we talked all about it, and we talked about how, he loved the little owl, and you guys would go outside and sit there, and you could even talk to the little owl. And it was just neat that he actually gave you time as an adult. He put all of his own things away, and he just talked to you and wanted to know you as a child. And me as a teacher for 32 years, I understand that. I understand how children that age love when an adult gives them priceless attention.
He was such an interesting man in that he was, kind of a stranger, obviously, to me.
James Cagney.
I knew of him. I knew that I was told that he was this bigger than life actor back in the 1940s through the, but I didn't really, I'm a young kid. I'm 7 years old. I didn't really know. When I got to his house, he was kind of a stranger to me, but he had this presence about him, this kind of, I don't know a comfortability within himself where he was almost, you could just sit there and watch him and study him. And he was fascinating. Again, he wanted to know who I was.
Yes.
He wanted to pick my brain and get to know interests and maybe draw from that. And then when I say draw from that emotionally and just maybe get back in some way and share some of his own experience that might make me feel like more curious, and that's exactly what he accomplished with me. He was, again, what does a 73-year-old man have in common with a 7-year-old child, except the fact that he did a movie with my mother? The way his house, the setting, the way it looked, the feel of it all, the observations that I made told me a lot about who he was. And as a 7-year-old boy, it gave me thought of, it told me that he had an imagination that was not unlike my imagination or a kid's imagination. And that made me feel like comfortable, like I was going to be okay. That was a good place to be, you know.
I know you liked
Yeah,
all his
so-
little trinkets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a question though, what was your preconceived notion before you even went there? Like, what were you thinking this man was going to be like? Did you have any idea what this man was supposed to be like?
I thought he was going to be not as available to be. I didn't think he was going to take the interest that he took in me. I thought he was more, you know, I thought he was going to be more of like, you know, when I remember meeting actors as a kid, they were usually, they were good storytellers, and they were very kind of, but they were about them, if you will. I don't mean to say, they just made it all about them in a way where
kids were in the background.
It would show you, yeah, exactly. Kids were in the back. Cagney did not do that. He didn't make it at all about him. He made it about me. And there was never a sense of urgency. He had to do something else. I had to wait, or he had to, you know, there was just this sense of being that whatever was said or done was going to be okay. And just, even if I just sat there and we stared at each other, it was just like
Comfortable.
Comfortable setting.
And so you wanted to give back to other people so they could feel it too.
I was so intrigued by what I had described in the book, which were the little characters inside the wall. I was just, where did this guy come up with this idea to do this?
All these little trinkets.
Yeah, because I was fascinated with building models as a kid, and obviously my imagination took me to, you know, I was fascinated with leprechauns and
you had
right
an imagination.
So,
and he did too. So that was
when I was a kid, I used to love watching old Hollywood stuff. Anything that was 50 years older than me, I thought it was kind of cool. So I knew of James Cagney, unless, like James said once before, I have a pretty good memory for a lot of stuff that's not useful. But unless memory is not serving me well, James Cagney was in a lot of those gangster movies.
He was, yeah.
And he would say things like, see, we're going to go and get that. You see, and we're going to do this. You see,
scared me. That was kind of scary.
And then
Ryan might have been scared too.
Gangsters.
And then I was a huge, thanks to Miss Shirley Jones, a huge fan of movie musicals. And so one day I was watching Yankee Doodle Dandy, and there was the You See guy, James Cagney. And that was my memory. And of course, when you're a little kid, you think these people you see on TV, you think those characters are their life. It's them. It's how they live. It's who they are. And you're describing a guy that's so 100% different than the guy you saw on TV in the movies. And they didn't see him on TV. They saw him in the movies, but I saw him on TV when I was a kid.
Yeah, you know, he did not. He didn't want to be seen as a gangster. You know, he fell into that character and was good at it. And so the studios just kept putting him in these, giving him these roles as these gangsters.
Yeah.
He wanted to be Little Johnny Jones. He wanted to be the character from Yankee Doodle Dandy. He loved that character, and that was his favorite movie that he did.
Wow.
Well, yeah, look at the cover.
Yeah, look at the cover.
Look.
That's him and Yankee Doodle Dandy. We knew that right away. Yeah. That was from his dancing musical.
You have the real picture in there too, so it's cool.
And he was a tap dancer, as you may remember, and that was my favorite form of dance. I loved it.
He should have taught you a tap dance while you were there.
But didn't he have his own unique style?
That was touched on. I don't think I think those days were behind him.
No tap shoes in the house.
Didn't he kind of have his own unique style of dancing? Like he was more pointy, or like his moves were a little more sharp or something?
Yeah, very much so. He was very loosey-goosey about it all, and kind of like flowed in a way that other dancers weren't able to do that. And he definitely had, he incorporated his own rhythm with it all and style with it all, moves that were just really for him, you know, that was his signature of it all.
Even your book shows how much you loved old Hollywood. And then I also read that the publisher also loved old Hollywood.
Yeah.
So they were excited about doing the book.
Yeah. Yeah. They have, that's all their background is Old Hollywood. Robert, who it's a husband and wife team that own the publishing company, and Robert Matson is written books on Old Hollywood, and so he was very familiar with James Cagney when I told him what I wanted to do, and he loved the idea, and so it all kind of came together.
That's cool.
It fit their mold of what they like publishing. Yeah.
It brought you together. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I have a question about this. I have a follow-up question about this book. Now, I know James Cagney inspired you. Were you ever an inspiring babysitter to somebody else? Did you pass that on?
Yeah. Babysitter from the standpoint of a child, I've certainly been a babysitter to my daughter.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I like to do when I'm with kids is I kind of like to find out what their interests are and then build on that, which is what James Cagney did.
Yes, that's what he did with you. That's
cool. And see where their imagination is. Because I think I had an imagination as a child, and I like to see if other kids have a kind of a similar kind of imagination that I had. And if that be the case, then I can kind of elaborate on things and just then, pull them into a situation where I can maybe have something in common with them.
There, you can draw magical pictures for them.
Yeah.
Well, what about you, John? Were you ever like a babysitter who someone grew up and said he was such an inspiration?
I think we talked about this before, right?
Did you ever babysit anyone? And that experience?
Yeah, I did. And I know what Ryan's talking about as far as, kind of looking at the child and seeing where the child's going to lead you and what their interests are and kind of trying to nurture that. And, I'm still very much in touch with my whole child being. And so I feel like I understand the innocence of children because somehow, some way I've managed to hang on to some of mine somehow.
Yeah.
Well, that's always great. I still got a lot of mine.
I love it.
Know where it's going to go in the next few years, but it's going to be around.
You know what my babysitter did? She played Partridge Family records all day.
Oh,
that's why you know every word.
That's my favorite babysitter. We were outside. She'd play the Partridge Family records, and we would make dances to them in the neighborhood.
The power of childhood and whatever it is that influences you when you're young, especially if it's good, how that influence just holds throughout your life.
Yes, it's still there.
Yeah. We're talking about I had an imaginary friend, and I thought that was really strange, but they say that can be good and makes a child smart. I don't know. Maybe I was bored.
I don't know. I have one still to this day. Her name is Gwen.
I never met her.
I should be quiet. You guys are going to have a whole new perception of me. Like, oh, really?
Me too.
There's
I don't talk to Tina
stories
anymore. Cool, that picture in there that he did for you, Ryan. That meant so much to you. I even see that you take it to the heritage, to the museum, and I'm thinking, don't lose that.
No, that drawing has traveled with me throughout the course of my life since a boy, and
it means so much to you.
Yeah, it kind of I would just look at it and think, whoa, how lucky am I to have spent part of the afternoon with this man named James Cagney, who gave me this drawing of a character that he knew maybe I could identify with, or some character that I maybe saw in his home, which was of his model handmade books that were in these display cases. There was something about it that I remember him asking me, what would you like me to draw for you? And I said, I'd like you to draw that little character inside that display case. Turned out to be one of the dwarfs from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Oh, we were wondering about that before. Remember when we were talking to Johnny, we were trying to decipher who that was?
Later I kind of I had this idea, and I mentioned to Johnny that maybe a character that to me it's almost like that's James Cagney dancing for me. That was the interpretation then created as a result. I thought, maybe it was him sort of dancing in the forest. It says from his florist, James Cagney.
That's cute, and he signed it for you.
We had our own ideas. Doris, what was your idea again? What do you think that was?
I thought it
She
was
does.
him dancing.
Oh, you thought it was a self-portrait of
Yeah,
the
I
front
thought
of
it was
the book.
a portrait.
Okay. And I just thought it was an elf or something. So
Yeah.
made up elf.
I think it probably was a combination of James Cagney and a little note in his curio cabinet.
Oh, yes.
It was a cross between the two of them.
He saw you looking at him there on the shelf.
Right.
That makes sense.
One of the things that always struck me with I have a long theater background, and Ryan talked about how Cagney had once played Puck in Midsummer Night's Dream, and that drawing kind of said to me, oh, maybe this is a little bit of a memory of playing Puck.
Okay.
And I never saw that one, but okay.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody's got an interpretation of it.
Well, it's our imaginations.
That's
Right?
it.
There's our imagination.
Which is, by the way, what I think he ultimately wanted it to become was somebody's imagination.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He was an artist, and he was a painter. And painters they love when the viewer kind of creates their own imagination as to what that image is in their mind, and that they walk away with what that image is and say, that's what I think this is. And I think that's what Cagney wanted. He wanted you to figure out what it was, and then you can live with that. And that's your...
And that's what we did. Yeah, we were all talking about it.
So everybody has their own different interpretation. That's
It was
beautiful.
Such a cool home that you felt like you were in Disneyland because all the
Yeah, I
characters.
saw a picture of it. It's a beautiful cobblestone home. Yeah, it's beautiful.
The house was incredible. I want to share this, and that is I actually saw this house again. I hadn't been there since that last year. I was lucky enough to meet the fellow that lives there now, kind of by accident. I was driving down the street that it's on, which is Coldwater Canyon here in Los Angeles, and I saw a car pull up to the driveway. That driveway leads to the house, and the gate was opening, and I pulled over, and my daughter Megan was with me, and I got out, and I went up to the car that was pulling into the driveway, knocked on the window, and a gentleman said hi, and I said, hi.
Cool.
Sorry to interrupt you, and I know I'm a complete stranger here, but I wrote a story about an afternoon that I spent here when James Cagney was living here, and I'd like to give you a copy of this book. I wrote a book, and he said, my God, thank you. And long story short, he invited me inside that afternoon. And
Really?
Outside, we got to go to the whole house and see the room, the very room that I was in with Mr. Cagney that day.
Aw.
It was like
Full circle. Yeah.
full circle, such a gift. I was just in heaven. It was the best.
Was it a big home or was it smaller?
No, it was a pretty large home.
Okay.
It didn't really look any different than I'd remembered it, except that it had different furniture in it, of course, and it was decorated differently.
And no leprechauns? No leprechauns in the wall.
No leprechauns in the wall. I felt James Cagney there, I can tell you. In the sense, I asked the owner, I said, do you have anything in this house of Mr. Cagney or that was left behind? He goes, there's a large black and white picture of Jim in the powder room he bought the house from the Mrs. Cagney, from Jimmy Cagney's wife. And there was a large picture of Cagney from his Warner Brothers days hanging in the powder room that still was there. And I went in and looked at that, and it was really cool.
Wow,
That's nice.
Cool.
That is cool. And now they could put the book right by it, too.
Well, the funny thing is, I asked if I could take photos, and when I'd given him the book, he was very grateful to get a copy, and he put it on a couch, like a little table by the couch. And when I took photos of the room that I remember being in with Mr. Cagney, that book was there. So it was kind of cool.
Oh,
wow.
Very cool.
Really did come full circle, So
Definitely.
So didn't you want to talk a little more about Ryan's fascination and collection?
Yes, I know that.
I know that you have a lot in common with Ryan. I'm looking at.
Your couch is full of books. What's all that?
Look at
These are all old Hollywood pictures, and they're of my family. But I know you represent your family as a historian for the Cassidy family. I wrote a few little things here because I've been able to see some of the things you took to that Hollywood Heritage Display Museum.
Right.
I've loved looking at your displays at that museum. I saw the bright purple outfit. I wanted to make sure I said this right, with the sequins on it. And then there was a picture of your mom right below it. And then I saw that you stood by one of your father's good looking suits, and it looked like one that you would even wear And I had read that you have like 60 suits. I don't know if that's true. And then I love the other costumes and the props that you had there. But the museum, I read, really, really likes you because of your classics and all the decades that you've been able to display. And so you make others smile when you bring, your setup. And this museum calls you a good friend. They love when you share your book and talk about your parents' stories that connect to old Hollywood. So you are the family historian, right?
Yeah. So just to give you a background on where my interests lie, how they started. I've always been a person that loved the past, specifically old magazines.
Yeah.
Antique cars. My first car was from the 90s when I was 16 years old. So my point is I feel like I have lived in different times in the past almost. Mm-hmm. And I love
far back
things are made. I love aesthetics and how the beauty of things, probably hence why I work in the decorating world in TV and film. Mm-hmm. And I've always incorporated the past, and a lot of that comes from my dad, who also had a love for colonial items and historic pieces of furniture. Growing up, that was what I was around my whole life. Mm-hmm. So that was something that was part of my childhood. And I remember as a kid collecting old National Geographics from the 1980s and loving all the ads in them. Mm-hmm. And men dressed, and of course, always saw my dad dressed up. My dad was never in the same outfit. And
I read that.
That really rubbed off on me. And so when I was taken to a museum as a kid, I remember just sitting there studying the things behind the glass, thinking, wow, that's, amazing. Stories that it almost like had its own soul, whatever it might have been that I was looking at. It was just, it could talk to you in its own way. It just was,
just like old movies.
My imagination and just go back to wherever that was and picture it then. So that was something that developed as I got older, and I'd always wanted to work in a museum setting and things. And I kind of curated things in my own home with things that were my family's, like my dad's Tony Award, which I have.
Yes.
Yeah, we heard about
Tell
that.
us that story from 1964. I know that's what you got. It was that time period, but it was lost. And
he's going to go get it.
He's going
to go get it.
He should tell the story.
Look at that. Look at the award. It's very nice.
He got it back.
Very nice.
Cool.
I'm so glad you have that.
That's very cool.
The story on this is that
the rescue mission.
My father was the recipient of it in 1964 for a musical called She Loves Me with Barbara Cook.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the music and lyricists were Sheldon Harnick and Jerry Bach. And Jerry Bach became a very dear friend of my father. And they actually became almost like a brother to my father. Mm-hmm. And when my father was putting his will together, he had his brother Joe Cassidy and Jerry Bach were the two executors to my father's will, right? Mm-hmm. And so when my father passed away, which was very tragic in an apartment fire in 1976, most of the things that were of importance were in his living room, and they were destroyed by the fire. And so the Tony Award, which he had, and which when he received it in 1964, he received it in sort of like a velvet jewelry box, which is how they were given out. And then later in life, the Tonys decided to give them on this stand, which is how they are given out now. And the stand...
Okay.
Tony turns. Well, my dad took his Tony, and I guess he placed it on some kind of a table in his living room. And as it turns out, the Tony did not get destroyed in the fire. But Jerry Bach, it was given to him through the course of when things were being salvaged. He got it, and with the intention of giving it to our family. And he kept it and I guess put it away and forgot about it. Well, many years later, one of my brother Patrick's managers, when my brother was an actor, he had a manager who represented him. He thought, well, I'm going to give Patrick a gift for I think it was one of his major birthdays. So he went to the Tonys and asked the Tonys to reissue my dad's Tony Award, which he said was destroyed in the fire. And we all thought it was. So the Tonys reissued the Tony that my dad would have gotten.
Okay.
How nice.
In fact, the Oscars will do that too. If your Academy Award is destroyed, and in Gene Kelly's case, his house was in a fire, burned in a fire in Beverly Hills, his Academy Award was destroyed, and the Oscars reissued his Academy Award.
That's nice. Nice to know.
So the Tonys reissued my dad's Tony.
Mhm.
And so my brother was given this Tony Award, and we thought, wow, that's great. There's a Tony that would have given them, my dad would have gotten. Well, a couple of years later, I was back in New York, in Pound Ridge, New York, staying at Jerry Bach's house because Jerry's son was a good friend of mine. And when I was there for a couple of days, and as I was leaving, Jerry said to me, Ryan, can I talk to you for a minute down in my office before you leave? I want to talk to you. And I said, sure. So I went downstairs to his office, and he said, listen, I have something I want to give you that I've been meaning to give you for a long time. And he handed me this Tony Award, which is the one that my dad was actually the one.
Wow.
That's so cool. I love
What did you say? Wow, it's like the original
I
one.
didn't know what to say. I was like, what is that? That is your father's Tony Award that I've had, that I've been meaning to give to your family. And now I'm giving it to you, and you need to have it. And so I was just grateful to get it.
So Patrick still has the other one, right? And you have this one. How cool.
I have the one that he would have gotten, or that he did get. Patrick has one that's just like it.
Wow.
Your dad had a beautiful voice. I loved listening to him sing.
Yeah.
That's why my mom fell in love with my dad, was because of his voice.
And his humor, too.
Humor.
I read that she loved that he had a humor also.
Oh, yeah.
That was his charm.
Very funny man.
Yeah.
He had full comedy timing, and he could charm the pants off of anybody.
I'm sure.
Well, I mean,
and that's what your mom says.
Say anything, literally.
Yeah.
I'm a kid, and I loved old Hollywood, and I'm watching this Jack Cassidy guy on Columbo, or there was this, before reality TV became a thing, there was this thing called Circus of the Stars. They had celebrities doing trapeze acts and things like that. And Jack Cassidy was the ringleader.
That's right.
I'm telling you, I'm a 10, 11, 12-year-old child, and I'm mesmerized by the charm, because I think I'm a very old soul, so I love old Hollywood. Jack is the epitome at that time of old Hollywood. He just dressed and looked and had this face that was chiseled and all.
He was meant to be that part. He was just meant to be that.
So
yeah.
I could see how he charmed these women. And he didn't have to say a thing. I'm 8 and I'm charmed.
And your mom was warned too, as I recall. Your mom was warned that he had charm.
Don't fall in love with him.
Don't fall for it.
He had
she did.
Charm.
Yeah.
Like the kind of charm that was, I say wicked, because you just fell in love with him.
Melt.
Yeah.
Not even he was. He was like, why do I love this man so much? He'd make you laugh. He was handsome. He dressed well. He had great taste. He knew the best restaurants to go to.
But being the youngest son and losing him when you're only 10 years old, no wonder you like to save memorabilia of him.
Yeah, I also had some very special moments with my dad before he passed away that I'll never forget. And I had some times with him that stayed with me that were positive. And because my dad wasn't always available to his kids. He was a performer. He traveled a lot, and he just wasn't around, And he also, I think he had, he was one of those people that he felt that kids were best seen and not heard kind of thing. Don't have toys in the house, put them in your room, don't leave them out. And I have some of my dad's traits, and I've learned to point out within myself, how to face those, the good ones and the bad ones. Not good. I've managed to process and recognize and identify.
Yes.
So I don't pass that on to my daughter. And for that, I'm great. But the good things that my dad left with me, he was incredibly compassionate and sensitive and caring and very creative. And when he would connect with you and when he was vulnerable in some way, he was an amazing guy. And I had some really amazing moments. We went to the Macy's Day Parade together in New York. He took me to New York. Just the two of us went there. He took me to the FAO Schwartz, which was one of the largest toy stores at the time in the world.
Yeah.
Talk about imagination.
And he would he rented a car and took me to the house he was raised in. I mean, things that I'll just never forget. Yeah.
So you're still holding that by getting all of his suits or some of his suits and dressing like him and going to the Hollywood Heritage Museum and showing your display. That's beautiful.
It keeps his legacy alive.
Yes, you're good at that.
And don't get me wrong, I see him for who he was. He wasn't perfect. By no means was he
Nobody
perfect.
is.
He had his challenges, but I'm able to take the things that he left with me that were important, that were good, keep those, and I'm able to keep his legacy alive by sharing stories like I'm doing with you guys now. Talking about him. I dress the way I want to dress, but that's because my dad had that. I saw him and I thought I love that style. I love that look. And that keeps him alive. And I feel like he's with me at times. And that's something that's very personal, but I believe it to be true.
And he was an art piece. And so you really like to decorate and you really like to notice things like this. And you like to come home after you work and redecorate your house. I read that. Yeah. And so these things that you do makes you an artist, even though you don't have a paintbrush. I read that too.
Yeah.
So you're a natural artist.
Yeah. My comfort zone is rearranging my house.
Yeah, I know. I read that.
Come over to my house and do that.
Again.
Well, wait a minute.
You could come to Chicago. We have plenty.
Here, let's do the,
Yeah.
We should ask them about our set decoration.
Well, we will. We'll ask them. But before that, I just wanted to ask you one quick question. Going back to the Heritage Museum, isn't there a suit there that you donated that's like, it's not one of Jack Cassidy's suits, but it's another one and you really love the suit? I think.
I loaned them one of Gary Cooper's tuxedos.
Okay.
That he wore in a movie that I have. Going back to suits, I do have a collection of suits that are from the 1930s. Some of them are from the 1920s.
Yeah.
And I actually wear them. And I have them tailored to fit me the way I need them to fit.
That's so cool.
Suits today are nice, but there are suits that men's suits come and go with style, as you might know. So you have a suit from the 80s that's a peak lapel, single-breasted suit, and it could look like something from the 80s. But suits then, the fabrics were different. They were more body form fitting. And I just learned a lot about the quality is there, right? Quality is incredible. A suit that you'd buy off the rack back in the 30s or 40s is like, you can't find that kind of suit today off the rack. So my dad's suits were all bespoke suits, which means that they were hand tailored and handmade to him. He picked out the material with his tailor and then they were made. And
piece of art.
Those are like a piece of art, yeah.
Did you wear one of those? Did you wear one of those suits to your mom's gala? I was going to ask about that. I was curious.
Well, they don't fit me anymore. His suits don't fit me, but I have worn suits that would be very almost identical to what he wore.
Okay, remade and stuff too.
I have these suits that my dad owned that came out of his condo when he passed, and they were made by a man by the name of Harry Cherry, and he was a tailor in Beverly Hills. And that's where my dad had many of the suits made.
People look different today. Men, women, both. We're not built the same way that people were in the 20s and 30s. So you're talking about these gorgeous suits and but I would imagine, you say you have them tailored to fit you. People were a little bit smaller. Height and width. I imagine that you're like adding a little something more. And I'm not trying to be funny. It's just the way it's made. You go to an old house that was built in 1922. You can't hardly get through the doorway.
No, you're 1,000% right. That is exactly right. People were smaller back then.
Mm-hmm. Heights were different.
Find a large men's suit from the 1930s, like I say a 40 or 42, is challenging.
Yes.
They're mostly 38s. Or even smaller.
Yes.
Oh. But I do like the way they look. When you post them on Instagram, I'm like, wow, that looks pretty snazzy.
Yeah.
Don't you say?
Well,
dapper.
The term dapper.
Yeah, pretty dapper there.
I love your displays.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's
my favorite.
Everybody.
Designer is Ralph Lauren, because Ralph Lauren actually has been known to bring back different looks from like the 30s, 40s. He reinvents things all the time. And I just like his style. That's kind of my favorite. There's a few others, but I like him a lot.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to know too.
I wear Ralph a lot.
I wish I had some of those.
I don't know Ralph Lauren bedspread.
We're going to talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about your career as a set designer, set decorator. First of all, I'm confused, Ryan. I don't understand the difference between a set designer, a set decorator. Isn't there a distinct difference between the
Yeah,
two?
very, very, very much so. So in the world of television and film, in the department for the art department, if you will, it starts out the department.
Sorry.
Oh,
The designer is,
Oh,
I would compare it to like hiring an architect, right? So the designer designs, the designer works closely with the writer, producers, and the writer writes the story, the script, and they create the setting, right? And then they create the budget, and the designer then will hire sometimes an art director, set designer, who actually will build the production designer will create like a blueprint of the set, right? And on that blueprint, they'll kind of give you an idea of where furniture is going to go, kind of like the blueprint of a house for an architect or a building. The set designer will then be brought in by the production designer or the art director, and then they'll work and they will execute all the colors that get the carpets, whatever it may be that's getting put in. And they can even sometimes build like a miniature foam core model of that set, so you can actually see it, a smaller version of what it's going to look like. Then the set decorator gets hired. The set decorator is brought in. They create their own budget as to what their budget is and what they have to get for that set. And so, like when you go into a house that you're going to thinking about buying that's on the market, it's an empty house. You then get to decorate it, right? You as the buyer pick out what you want, or you bring what you want that you have from your other location. So that's what a set is. When we get a set, it's like an empty house, and that the designer the designer hires a construction crew. They build the actual set on that stage, and we usually look at that blueprint as set dressers. The set dressers are the guys that actually, after the decorator has picked everything out and tagged everything in a prop house or purchased it, we then go pick it up, we bring it to the set, and we dress it in. So we dress it in per what the decorator decides or what the decorator wants. And in some cases, we also work with the designer and the set designer and the production designer. So all of us are in the same kind of under the same umbrella.
Mhm.
And in some cases, the set dresser, if the decorator says, hey, just dress that in the set, this is where I want the large pieces to go, the dressers can then kind of get creative and dress in smaller stuff on their own. And if it's a period piece, you want it to make sure it's accurate with the period. So if you're dressing a department store, you have to make sure that it's all accurate to that period.
Yeah.
I'm sure you love getting on eBay.
And there's also a buyer. And what a buyer will do is they'll go out and they'll work with the decorator. And the decorator will say, I'm looking for, colonial hutches, or I'm looking for French Art Deco chairs, or I'm looking for old stoves from the 1930s. They'll go take photos of all that stuff, and they'll send photos to the decorator, and the decorator will then pick out what they want.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
So
that's like those home improvement shows.
Yeah.
They go shopping
Yeah.
in these stores. Yeah, I'm looking for this.
There was a show years ago called Trading Spaces. You had like $1,000 and you go and shop and fix your friend's house with that $1,000, and they either liked it or didn't.
Yeah.
But
fun.
you had your first gig, from what I'm understanding, in this career of set dresser?
Set dresser.
Okay. Was with Jim Henson? Did you do the Jim Henson?
The puppet.
Yeah, so I worked on a show called Muppets Tonight, and I had been an employee with the company, with Jim Henson Productions, and I wanted to work in the set decorating department and the art department, and they were starting up a new show called Muppets Tonight, and they allowed me to leave the company because I couldn't stay as an employee of the company and get on the show Muppets Tonight as a set dresser trainee. And from that show, I was able to get into the IATSE union, which is the unions for all the crafts. And from there, I just got on another show, and I just kept working. But that was my first job in the set decorating world. And that was kind of a challenging show, but it was fun because all the sets were elevated for the puppeteers to walk through.
Yeah.
So we had to put this furniture on platforms so the puppeteers could walk through with their arm raised and the puppet on their arm to walk through the set.
Oh.
So there was a little bit more work involved with that, but it was a lot of fun.
Because nobody thinks about that with the puppets.
Yeah, the sets are like, 5-6 feet in the air. I'm saying the bottom of the
Wow.
doorway is about 5 feet in the air. So you're literally walking through it with your arm in the air with a puppet on your arm going through the house or going through the location.
Wow. So they're all standing when they're using the puppet.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you know it, my friend, because you are now our friend, but you have an anniversary. You just celebrated like 3 days ago.
Happy
On,
birthday.
in 1985, on February 27th, you were first episode on Facts of Life.
Nice.
Look at this. I guess.
Look at that.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. There's the black and white TV guide.
I
There
thought
he
I'd
is.
bring that up real quick. I
Yeah.
want to go back to the sets designer stuff, but it's in my notes, so I didn't want to forget that you had an anniversary.
Plus your birthday. Let's not forget his birthday.
And you did have a birthday. Oh my
He
goodness.
just turned,
Another birthday.
He just turned 29 for the 30th
Oh,
Yeah.
us too.
Oh, the 30th anniversary of your 29th birthday.
My
That's
29th?
That means
Well,
I'm
I got-
25.
time.
I feel really good. I turned 59 and I feel great. And the 60s are going to be some of my better years, I feel. I just feel it.
well,
Good attitude.
Cindy and I can attest
We're in
that
the 60s club.
It gets better. It only gets better.
I have 53 days till I turn 60. 53 days.
Oh, really?
It's birthday early to you, John, but we'll be
Yeah.
in touch.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I
definitely.
wanted to ask you real quick, Ryan, going back to the set. So you work right now on Instagram.
Correct.
You also worked on other sets. And one of my favorite old shows that I still watch today was The King of Queens.
Yep.
Now these are The King of Queens have like you have a living room, a kitchen. Sometimes they would go upstairs and they have a garage. I can see those places needing set design, decorator, dresser, all of those things. NCIS has a morgue and a
dead bodies
room where all
Okay.
agents are.
They need somebody in there to help them.
exactly are
Oh,
you
the squad room.
designing?
What's
Pardon
that?
me?
That's called the squad room. I was just in the morgue set on Friday, actually working.
Oh, cool.
I saw a dead body on the other episode I watched the other night. How'd you design the dead body too?
No. So that morgue that's been there before, it was there before I got there. I got there season 19. So I've been there and we're going into season 23. We got picked up.
Wow.
Main sets there that are the like the principal sets that we're always in is the squad room, which is the room where they have all their little desks at. We're in the MTAC set, which is where they have these they sit and they look at a giant screen. They talk to somebody from another continent or wherever. We're in the interrogation room a lot, and we're in the autopsy room, and we're in forensics a lot, which is one of the principal sets. So the principal sets are called the permanent sets, and then they have swing sets. Swing sets are sets that are built just for that episode. And in some cases, they could be anything from apartments, hotel rooms, to offices, to art galleries, whatever it may be that pertains, that is in that storyline, that the storyline calls for that specific location. In some cases, we're at a location off the facility where we work. We're at these, there are warehouses that were turned into sound stages. So it's not a studio, it's more of a industrial area about 30 minutes from where I live, which is where we shoot the show. But it's a very well-oiled machine, as you can imagine, being on for 22 seasons. And I get to work with some great actors. Gary Cole, who's a friend of mine,
Oh, we love Gary Cole.
he's a good actor. He's an amazing, and he's just a phenomenal human being. He's just an amazing man on all levels. He's a dear friend of mine, and I love going to work every day and seeing him.
That's
I would
awesome.
But all the actors.
love to work one day with Gary Cole.
So anyway, yeah.
Remember him on the Brady Bunch movie? The Brady. It was his out of the sequence role type thing he did. Yeah, that's not his usual role.
I met Gary because my brother Sean created a show called American Gothic that Gary was.
You know, we know all about that.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Loved
Don't
it.
get Yuri started.
Yeah.
Don't get her started.
That's my all-time
She knows.
favorite
Oh
TV
no,
show.
she started.
Well, it is.
It was a good show.
It's underrated.
It was a good show. It was yeah,
That's funny.
very good show.
Well,
So- Tell
Sorry.
Gary Cole if you ever remember that Doris said that's Buck.
I will.
With a B.
Buck with a B.
A buck with a B,
Buck.
yeah.
Bump
You got
with the B.
Talladega Nights. You ever see Gary in Talladega Nights?
Yes,
Yeah.
with Will Ferrell. Yes, he was hilarious.
Gone like
My gosh, hilarious.
Okay. But you do, I guess in my head, and maybe Cindy can agree, we were just thinking the show is different to design, decorate, dress. NC has like a very, like, I don't know, like it's dress desk. You got desk
Serious.
and a big old
Yeah.
monitor. And then you got King of Queens, which is whimsical and funny. And I would just, which one do you design like better to design?
Okay,
or
so
dress?
King of Queens is a half-hour show, and
Yes.
multicam half-hour shows are done usually in front of a live audience, and all of the sets on one soundstage. It's kind of like doing theater. They're all little. All the walls are Luan and 1x3, and they're small sets. Generally speaking, they're small sets. And then you put them all together, you line them all up, and then in front of that is the camera aisle. So the cameras can go up and down the aisle and shoot each of the sets out. So on a multicam half-hour show, the way it's designed is that you go to that one stage. It's usually one stage that it's all on, and you block and shoot the show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and sometimes Thursday. Then they bring in a live audience to get a laugh track, and you shoot the whole show on a Friday and in front of the live audience. And it's just a different format, different way of shooting. And
Yeah.
I like both of them. I think they're both great. I got most of my experience on multicam half-hour shows like King of Queens, but 1 hour shows are generally, for what I do, are a little harder because it's not all in one. You're all over the map. You could be
Yeah.
like on one stage doing one scene, and you have to go to another stage to do another scene on another set. You're all over the place, unlike multicam shows where it's all on the same stage. You understand?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, very interesting. How they set it up
Yeah.
for.
I would think like a show like NCIS or any crime kind of show like that, being like a drama, more serious. I could get this an hour long. Yeah, I could probably get into that, especially if you put Gary Cole next to me. Yeah, I'll be okay.
That's cool.
Yeah, I worked on. Do you guys remember a show called How to Get Away with Murder with Viola Davis?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I worked on that show for a little while, and that was an intense show to work on. First of all, she's a phenomenal actress.
Yes, she is.
I would be watching her do a scene, and I was just like mesmerized by her performances.
Yeah.
And that's, when you work on these shows, these 1 hour dramas, you have to be very quiet. And sometimes if the scene requires like some heavy emotion, you really just, let it ride out. But I'm an observer. I'm working there. I'm a worker on the show, and I'm watching the scene unfold. And it's like, wow, this is intense. And in some cases, it's really fun. It's really cool. And you get to see an artist at work.
Yes.
But you were in front of the camera with the other show.
Yeah.
Back to life.
Yeah.
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 That was your first.
I'll tell you a funny story. So when I worked on Facts of Life, my character was Kevin Metcalf, as you know. When I switched gears and I started working behind the camera in set decorating work, I was working on a show and I was putting up a sconce on a set. It may have been King of Queens, actually. And on some of these walls, these set walls behind the set, they have stencils of what show they were from, because a lot of the set walls get recycled and they're used on another set, on another show. They just replace none of it, the facade of it. So I was working on a set and I was putting a sconce on the wall, and I see a stencil that says Facts of Life on the back of the wall. I thought,
really?
Wait a minute, that's full circle now. That's really
Right.
Wow. Who put that there?
For
Yeah.
sure.
That's interesting.
Oh, speaking of interesting, who worked at the police department?
Yeah.
Volunteered?
Another
Yeah.
interest.
Volunteered at the police department.
I do. So I had a strong desire to be a police officer when I was growing up, and was always fascinated with police work. There was something about public administration and working with the public, and sort of listening to both sides of the story and trying to bring some sort of harmony to chaos. There was something that I was attracted to with that. And so I was, when I was a teenager, I was a law enforcement explorer, and I was with the sheriff's department. I went through an academy and I graduated, and I rode out in cars, and I got some experience as a youngster. And so that desire never really left me, except that I didn't become a police officer. I went into show business, and the desire never left me. And many years ago, I applied to be what they call a specialist reserve officer with LAPD. And I went through the process, and I was fingerprinted, and they did a little background investigation on me, and I was accepted. And I'm specialist. I'm what they call a specialist volunteer, and I'm assigned to a division. So whenever I'm free, which is usually when I'm not working and I'm on a hiatus, I do volunteer my time with the department, and I help them in which way I can. And then I also became a board director at the Los Angeles Police Museum, and I'm board chair of Archives and Exhibit. So we have some really cool exhibits there. And I helped kind of create the Adam 12 exhibit, because Adam 12 was based in Los Angeles.
I love that one.
Yeah.
And I grew up with Kent McCord, who played Officer Reed in Adam 12.
Yes.
So LAPD and police work has been part of my life, and I respect. I don't like all police officers, but the ones that I've come to know and I like a lot, and I respect. Like anything.
I have a story about a policeman. My dad retired as a sergeant in the police force.
Wow.
And he went through a lot, and I didn't realize what he went through until I made a police book. He left behind all these newspaper articles and stories, all these stories that I didn't know about. He had some interesting pictures in there that I never saw before. It was amazing. Wow. It's amazing what they go through that you don't really realize. So to read this book was amazing.
What department was your dad with?
He was with the Mount Prospect Police Department in a suburb of Chicago. He was a great officer, and he drove P1, which, fun fact, is the Blues Brothers car. That's my dad's car. P1 is my dad's car. That's what he drove. That's in our history.
Well, a lot of my friends growing up were police officers, and I'd always just was fascinated with the stories that they would share. And again, the ones that I got to know that were really doing it because they wanted to be of service and they wanted to give back and they wanted to help, those are the people that I really looked up to. And I think it was also because it was such a far cry from what I grew up with. There was something I admired about going out there and trying to, be of service and help people and then go home. And obviously you're going to see some of the worst when you're a police officer. So it's, I got to experience that as a deputy explorer with the LA County Sheriff's Department. I saw some pretty horrific stuff. And it made me appreciate my own family, and it made me appreciate just everything. So, I think the hardest thing is that police officers, their hands are tied a lot of the time because they have to follow protocol and how they were trained, and their instincts may tell them to do something else, but they have to do what they're trained to do. And sometimes what they're trained to do is going to be viewed as not right and not okay, and seen as something that's not good. So I think that I just know that from my experience and when I'm gone out in radio cars on ride-alongs, I learn a lot, and I try to come from a place of compassion with everything, because there's a lot of suffering that goes on out there, and there's a lot of also health issues, but there's a lot of suffering, and you want to be able to find harmony and peace through that and give back in some way to somebody who's not as fortunate. So
I'm glad, Ryan, that you went to LAPD and not Beverly Hills, just because I think, growing up here, I'm living in the Midwest in Chicago. You think Beverly Hills and you think, oh, that's the fluffy foo-foo cops. And then you got the LAPD. No. They're the cops. They're the gritty cops. That's just how we perceive it. And then right now, police just don't have a good, especially in Chicago, the police department. It's just, they don't have a good rap for everything that they go through and do and protect and help and serve and everything else. But then you hear the kind of negative, bad stories on TV, and they're just not getting the best of.
It paints them out to be bad guys. And It's unfortunate because you don't hear about the stories a lot of the time of the ones that really do save somebody or help somebody. You only see what the media paints. And it's unfortunate. And by the way, Chicago is not the only place where they're getting a bad rap. But the pendulum swings both ways, and it's starting to swing back the other way, I think, where police will start to gain a little bit more credibility, I think, for what they're.
But there's body cams these days too, so
I can't get away without doing anything without somebody.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
My dad didn't have body cams when he retired, but
their hands are tied because not that they were doing things that were incorrect. They're to be comfortable in their job and to do it the way that, and sometimes to just be reasonable, just say, this is how we're going to do it. Somebody's going to find fault in it and they're going to put a camera on.
It's true.
So it's unfortunate, but I think it's slowly starting to change.
Hopefully, yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people never knew that Ryan Cassidy was that connected to law enforcement. So that's really cool that you are.
Yeah.
But let's talk about some silly stuff for a second. I mean, it's whimsical a little bit. Back in the early, maybe the late 80s, early.
With Lionel Richie.
That was his first. No speaking in that one, but I was pretty facing it.
By the collar, and he threw me against.
It looked like there was a fight. Yeah.
Yeah, this ball, and he was so cool. And
yeah, he seemed like a cool guy.
I was a fan, I was a big fan then. And I went in, and I think they put me on tape, and they sent the tape to Lionel, and Lionel said, "Yeah, he's the guy we're going to hire."
Yeah.
I just had to give a certain look, kind of thing, and that
there
was
you go. Yeah.
Sometimes how you get the part, right?
What's that?
You get the part by your look sometimes.
Yeah,
like, that's the look we're looking for.
Oh no.
I had to look at the camera and give this really intense kind of look, and then they gave it to Lionel, and Lionel went through the ones and he liked mine. I guess
that's the one.
Wow,
the cool Cassidy there in line. That's right, Cam.
Yeah.
Did he know who you were related to though?
Oh yeah, very much.
He did know. Okay, he did.
Yeah, he knew everybody in my family.
Yeah.
He was a total gem to work with. Total classic.
He's one of those people that on TV, you think he is the guy off camera who he is on camera. He just seems so nice and fun and
that
happy.
Way. We stayed in touch, and even had dinner one or lunch, I think, one day. And he was just such an amazing guy. He had a business degree, so he's a very smart, savvy businessman. And we shared a lot of things in common, Obviously, growing up in a musical family, we talked a lot about music, accomplishments that my family had made. And we talked a little bit about family and his family. And he was just a nice man. Every time he see me, he'd wrap his arms around me and give me a big hug.
Yeah, he looks very nice.
I got the pleasure to see him in concert 4 years ago. We have a little outdoor music venue here, and you could bring little picnics and everything. It's called Ravinia. And people bring wine and picnics. And my friend asked me to go, and I'm like, are you serious? I'm not even. I walked out of there saying, wow, that was one of the best shows I've seen. Lionel Richie was one of the best concerts I've seen. It was good. It was really good. So I was happy she asked me to go.
Very impressive. Very impressive.
He certainly has had a lot of hits between the Commodores and when he went solo.
Yes.
I mean, every time in the 80s, you turn on the radio, every other song was a Lionel Richie song.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yeah. And it was getting like, okay, another one. But he was, you couldn't turn on the radio or MTV and not see Lionel.
Yeah, big in the 80s.
And now Ryan's on there.
No,
that's right.
Yeah, MTV was, it was kind of like when I got that job, and it was my first on-camera job, if you will, professional on-camera type of a job. I did it in one day, and I remember when it aired on MTV, and it was like, wow, that's really cool. I was kind of like, that's kind of a cool thing. I was about it.
What'd your mom say? Did she like it?
Mom loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
It is cool.
It's fun.
All right, we got another thing to ask you. We know you had a nickname when you were younger. We want to know how you got your nickname.
So my nickname was Charlie, and my dad had nicknames for everybody. I don't know really where he got the name Charlie. But,
that's what we were wondering.
Well, there's a few Charlies in my family. Charlie is something that I think he just, from the time I was a little boy, he saw Charlie in me in some way. I don't know where he created that name.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Maybe it was Willy Wonka
Maybe.
out those days.
I don't know, because I don't know. But that was my name. He addressed all of the letters to Charlie. My brothers.
that is so
Charlie.
funny.
Yeah.
Or was he the one that picked out the name Ryan? Was he the one that picked out your name Ryan?
I would imagine so. I don't know,
He called you Charlie.
to be honest with that, but I would imagine that my dad probably thought of that name.
Nice
Yeah.
Irish name.
Hey, what did you want to ask Ryan no more? Let's get serious.
Well,
What?
he likes old Hollywood, and he gets serious about, displaying old Hollywood things. Well, I did my ancestry, and I found out that I'm related to, and I don't know if you know who she is, Helen Lint, and she's from the 20s, and she was in these movies right here. And there's
Singing.
okay, and I found out that she's my cousin, and so I thought
Wow.
that was cool. And I wrote it down here. She's my first cousin, 2 times removed, and she was one of the first Hollywood stars for her family to move there. And then Lauren Bacall was wife of my second cousin, Jason Robards. And then Jason Robards Sr. married my blood relative. Jason Robards is sister with Laurel Robards. And the other turned 80, and I gave her a call, so that was really cool.
Oh, that's
Isn't that neat?
So you have
Yeah.
a Hollywood
Anyway,
history there.
I love collections, and I love the Hollywood collections. And you were mentioning that you knew something more about this one, about him.
Well, I have an old Victrola record player with 78 records, and I have several original Al Jolson 78
cool.
where you crank it up and it plays the song.
Wow.
And
And
it's
like,
got that big old needle and it goes.
yeah, exactly.
That's neat.
That's
I
cool.
remember Al Jolson, his tomb is in on the side of the 405 freeway out here in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And I remember anytime you'd go to the LAX airport, you'd pass by it. I remember looking at it, always going, "There's Al Jolson's tomb. I want to stop there one day." And I did. I stopped there and took pictures.
Cool. Well,
Oh, that
that's
is
small
cool.
world.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really neat. And then the lady that I called the other day, I said, we're blood related, and your brother, Jason Robards, was married to Lauren Bacall. So I thought that was really cool. So I started collecting Lauren Bacall stuff. And then I found out my cousin was married to a man from Gone with the Wind, too, one of the main stars. And Carol Nye, do you know who that is?
No.
Okay. Well, Lauren Bacall married Jason Robards, and Jason Robards' stepmother, was my cousin, but I'm blood related to Jason Robards' sister. And I just thought that was really cool. And then to get to talk to Laurel Robards on the phone on her 80th birthday, I thought that was awesome.
Very
That's
neat.
very neat.
Little
Jay.
Hollywood lineage there for you.
Yeah.
But this
yeah,
is cooler
right?
talking to you. It is. It's awesome.
That's just Ryan,
That's just
Johnny. Come on.
He's our buddy.
I can't because I care.
Yeah. You're amazing.
You guys have been a pleasure to talk to.
Thank you, Ryan.
We
We
had a lot of
can't
fun.
thank you enough. Thank you guys
Yeah.
so much for taking time out of your Sunday afternoon, Sunday morning to spend with us.
Yeah.
We had a great time, and we did a beautiful tribute to Miss Shirley Jones for her 90th birthday.
Last year.
Last year, we did a 2-part podcast episode,
Nice.
and we are planning to do a tribute to Mr. Jack Cassidy this year. And we thought maybe at St. Patrick's Day or
Birthday's coming up.
birthday,
March
It's
5th.
March 5th.
which is Andy Gibbs' birthday too, in case you didn't know.
Andy Give.
These girls
yeah.
know all the fun facts.
We're the fun fact group.
They're good at that.
Well, on our Facebook page, I'm mostly the Facebook page creator, designer. We got
Yeah.
to have something in common. I'm just not
There
as
you
good
go.
as you are, but
Artists.
I have to come up with Fun Fact Friday. So
Yeah.
that's how I do a lot of research, and that's how I learned Jack and Andy
Yeah.
had the same birthday.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, I really enjoyed this, and you guys are just incredible. Thank you for all the
Thank
great
you.
Cindy for
And
sharing.
I hope
your-
you like our set decoration. We were going to ask you
I-
about set
They worked
decoration.
hard on that for you.
I
So,
like
Yeah.
like the 7.
the round block in the round LPs.
Yeah.
It works together very well.
There's some books in the back too.
Couple of guys we never heard of.
Yeah, just a few books
Cool.
that we had along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Johnny. John, thanks for tagging along.
This
We
is
know
Johnny's book.
we didn't
Thank
say
you
a
guys.
whole
No, this
lot.
has been fun.
Yeah, we love getting together, you guys. It's
And,
fun.
and you guys
You-
enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very, very much.
Have a fantastic weekend, rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you
Yes.
soon.
Tell
Thank you,
everybody to
Ryan.
get this book. It's so cute.
Thank you. Yes.
It's as cute as Ryan is.
Tell everybody where they can get James Cagney Was My Babysitter. And
Hey,
even
tell 'em.
John will let you plug your book also when we're singing.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys. This was great.
Where's the other book?
Thanks, guys.
I believe we can get that on Amazon. I got mine on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, you can get that can be found. James Cagney Was My Babysitters on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. You can also get it through my website, whenwe'resinging.com. If you want a signed copy, we have signed copies by Ryan through our website.
Oh,
And
cool.
say that again, whenwe'resinging.com.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Thank you, Dory.
That's
Hey,
enough.
thanks to all of you. This was great.
Thank you
Thanks,
guys so
Scott.
much. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Ryan.
Bye,
All
guys.
right. Bye, guys.
Later.
Bye.